Welcome to the JD Bunkis podcast. What a couple weeks for Leaf fans. You go into Christmas and the only thought you could have possibly had was, well, this year sucked. Well, this season is looking like a write-off. What could they do to get you to believe that things could be different for this hockey team? God, it had the writings of those mid to late 2000s teams where you know they're not good enough and yet they're not bad enough. So you were going to watch a frustrating season where it never really felt like there was hope, but they were going to finish in a terrible spot, maybe 9th, 10th in the Eastern Conference. And much like the mid to late 2000s, hand a first-round pick to the Boston Bruins yet again. Real 2000s vibes. And over the last couple of weeks, it's almost hard to describe how good it's looked. You watched it at the very beginning and you went, okay, this is nice. There were a couple of, I would say, not shaky wins, but like you beat the Ottawa Senators, I think it was 7-5, and you keep giving up goals and you keep coughing up leads and they get out of there with a victory, but you weren't looking at that going, man, this is just this team has figured it out. But slowly and steadily, they started to come together as a group. They got hit with a bunch of other injuries. Everyone started wringing their hands about when William Nylander was going to return, the dreaded day-to-day. And slowly but surely, the power play didn't just find its level. It became first in the NHL over this stretch. The penalty kill, which had been one of the better points of the year, now looking dominant. Now, like the other night, they take 6 penalties, 4 in the first period. And yeah, it's against the Vancouver Canucks, but even still, it's a professional hockey team. And the first 4 penalties that the Leafs took, the power play didn't get a sniff for the Vancouver Canucks. There was basically nothing there. It's the best penalty kill in the league over the last couple of weeks. And I think the 3rd best over the entire season. It's not just the results. It's the process. If you're a Leafs fan and you've watched this team over the last decade, you've watched them during the Matthews era, then you know the conversation has always been about Team A and Team B and the stars, the haves versus the have-nots. And frankly, I don't remember, even in the early years of Matthews, Nylander, and Marner, feeling like the team was as solid lines 1 through 4 as it has looked during this stretch, where people are getting annoyed that Bobby McMahon, like a quality depth player who had a really, really good December, led the team in points in December, did something that no other Leaf has done since the drafting of Matthews, Marner, and Nylander, and those guys started playing regular minutes, which is a month where, or Tavares, signing Tavares, where one of those 4 guys didn't score the most points for the Leafs in a month. But that kind of a player gets shuffled down to the 4th line, and you can have a discussion about where he should be in your lineup. Scott Laughton has emerged as a huge fan favorite. Bobby McMahon has produced. They've got a 3rd line that is actually contributing something every single night, even if it isn't on the score sheet. Matthews is playing as good a hockey as he's played all year. Nylander jumps in the lineup, and, you know, people like me were having conversations going, hey, you know, how's he going to fit in? And the first game back, he gets 3 points. Granted, again, against the Canucks, but still hard not to feel a little optimistic when you see something like that and go, wow, nothing's really shaking the boat right now. Things look very smooth with the Toronto Maple Leafs. So the special teams are amazing. They look connected on and off the ice, by the way. Like, it's 1 through 4 is contributing, but the body language of the team is incredible right now. They're loud on the bench. They're great with each other. The team looks very good. And now we have a stretch that will, I believe, define their season. Over the next 2 weeks, they've got the Avalanche twice, the Golden Knights twice. They go to Utah, which is a really tough place to play. They play Minnesota, Detroit, and then one game against the Jets. So you probably want to get that one. This stretch is basically going to be, who are you really? Because if they come out of this and it's over 500, it's going to be hard for Leaf fans not to feel like maybe this year is different. Always sounds stupid when we say it, but this is one hell of a test ahead of the Olympic break. Anyway, what a weekend for the NFL. Every game exciting, except for maybe the last one. I don't know. Depends how you feel about it. I don't know if I've ever seen a quarterback take a beating like that. But yeah, all these games coming down to the wire. Games that we thought were going to be blowouts like the Panthers, they find a way to make it exciting late. Brady Quinn is our Monday morning insider, our NFL analyst, of course, of Fox, former NFL QB. He joins us now. What's up, buddy? How are we doing?
Not much. Yeah, just obviously a great slate of games, I think, for the
Unreal.
NFL for the most part too. And honestly, I kind of walk away after seeing all those teams excited about some, thinking, is there any way, is it possible for like the 49ers, a team, to have to go through the gauntlet of the NFC West to get to the conference championship and potentially go play for a Super Bowl? It seems rather unlikely, but I'm not counting it out at this point. So a lot of great storylines too as we head into the divisional weekend this weekend.
Yeah, I can't wait. I don't know if we got the best teams, but we definitely got exciting games. And yeah, it's gonna set up a lot more of, hey, don't write this team off in the next round. That's for sure. Okay, so I want to try to hit on all of these games. So I'm going to start with the latest and work my way back through Saturday. Justin Herbert and Drake May, basically nothing going through the air all game long. Tight game. I think it was 6-3 at the half, right?
Yeah.
And I'm kind of feeling like, okay, this is going to be first touchdown wins. I don't like starting with the losing team, but I think that that's going to be the case in a couple of these. But I got to say, now Justin Herbert, 6 seasons, no playoff wins. It's really hard to look at him and criticize him based on the way that offensive line played. A lot of credit to the Patriots, who were able to get a lot of pressure and a lot of pressure late whenever they tried to mount a comeback. But what are your Justin Herbert feelings after that game? Because it is starting to feel like he is the quarterback that we make the most excuses for.
Yeah, but again, this is a year where I think those excuses are warranted. I mean, that offensive line is awful, and you don't have to look any further than the beginning of the game when they roll out the lineups and you look at the Pro
Yeah, I
Football
know.
Focus rating. So take that for
38,
whatever you
37,
want, but
38,
it's
37.
like
It's
the dead
everyone's either
last in
dead
every single
last or
category.
second last.
And it's like, oh, okay, I can see where this is going.
Mhm.
But also, look, credit to the Patriots. I mean, that is one of the better defenses I think we've seen in the NFL this season. Vrabel's got to play at a really high level.
Mhm.
Watching that game, I kind of came away thinking, okay, like I know how good the Chargers, can be defensively. Their offensive line is the thing that's just holding them back. And there's nothing they can do about that until they get the next season. So I think in the past, maybe some of those concerns or the comments about Justin Herbert, what he is or what he isn't or what he hasn't accomplished yet, they may have been warranted in spots. This is one though where I mean, it looked like at times his soul got ripped from his body with some of those hits and some of the punishment that he took. And I just think this was a Chargers team that limped into the playoffs, if we're being honest with ourselves. And I didn't expect them to be able to win this game. I like the Patriots the entire time, and I really like the Patriots to eventually, it's them or the Bills. Like that's
Mhm.
where I feel like this thing is going. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Denver will surprise me. But I think when you look at the AFC playoffs picture, those are the two teams that I'm most scared of, in part because I think, at least on the Patriots side, their defense and the play of quarterback Drake May. On the Bills, it's really just Josh Allen. I mean, their defense stepped
Mhm.
up at times to make some plays, but I also feel like there are plays to be made versus that group. So I think the Bills right now have the edge to be the best team in representing the AFC when it's all said and done in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I was saying on my Friday preview that there's no team that has the pressure that the Bills do, and I don't even feel it's close. I will say that you're right about the offensive line, right? It's hard to look at this game and say, hey, Justin Herbert should have done this or Justin Herbert should have done that when he's taking the beating that he took. Like the one play where he fumbles in the fourth quarter,
Yeah.
where it's just a complete collapse by the offensive line, and he eats that shot to the sternum And then
Yeah.
you see his elbow is all scraped up and his offensive line is trying to pick him up off the ground. And he's like begging him for just like a second. Hey, man, just
Yeah, just give
like
me a break.
his body might be broken into pieces. Like just wait 2 seconds before you're trying to pick him off the turf, and a game that at that point is over. So understanding the offensive line issues, here's my only criticism of Herbert. And I want you to tell me how fair this is. Coming into the league, the criticism about him was like draft day. Nobody showed up at his birthday party, right? He's a bit of a weird guy. He's a bit of an enigma. We don't really know if he's a leader of men, which is like a thing with quarterbacks. Come on, like it really is when you look at a guy like Josh Allen or even Drake May in this football game. And the one thing that bothered me about Justin Herbert in this game is every single shot of him on the sideline looked like a guy who was defeated. It's shoulder slumped. He's not talking to his teammates. He's not looking at the tablet. He's not going over things with the offensive coordinator or the coaching staff. And maybe there were some of those shots that we didn't get, but the body language of the guy really did bother me throughout that game. And I felt like if I was his teammate and I'm looking over at him, knowing that he was going to need to provide us with a drive, that he looked like a guy who had already quit on his football team.
Yeah, I can sense that. I think that's a fair thing to say. And it's probably something that if you are talking to him in the offseason, you're kind of saying to him, like, hey, your body language matters. There's other quarterbacks too who I think you can draw similar comparisons to. I mean, Jay Cutler was always a guy that kind of looked, a little bit kind of not even aloof, but just maybe more negative. Maybe he was just more down at times, but he wasn't one of those guys either that you looked at. But you also did see him barking at the other team and talking trash and getting up into it. So it was a little different because that's just not Justin Herbert. By the way, that hasn't ever been Justin Herbert. I mean, this is a local kid from Eugene, Oregon, who goes on to play at Oregon and, obviously has an incredible career, got better every single year. And there was always like kind of a disconnect of, he hasn't reached his full potential. Like when you saw him in college, I remember seeing him and thinking, what an Adonis as far as how big he is, how strong his arm is. The only question that I had when he was coming out was like, could he layer throws? Because he had such a strong arm. It was almost like he couldn't kind of pull back off of throws to fit them into certain windows. And I think he's been able to overcome some of that throughout the course of his career passing. And I think the frustration for him was probably the fact that they get into the playoffs, but he full well knows this isn't really going anywhere because their team's just not built for what they need it to be. And I think that's not just his job. It's also what their identity and offense wants to be under Jim Harbaugh. They want to be able to run the football. They want to have play action pass boots off of that. That's always been the identity of a Jim Harbaugh team. And so I'm sure he even senses frustration from Jim Harbaugh about what this team is and what it isn't.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't have to go back any further to looking at his San Francisco 49ers teams, his college teams at Michigan or Stanford. That's always been a group that's been like dominated by its offensive line. And in the NFL, you only have so much depth. I mean, we haven't gotten to Philly yet, but that's one of the better offensive lines when healthy. And obviously that's a group that their play has teetered off a little bit. They don't have Lane Johnson. They didn't look quite as good. And then you see, how more pedestrian it can get, for even one of the best offensive lines. So I look at it, and like I said, I think it's a fair criticism in regards to if you're looking at Justin Herbert and saying, like, hey, what are some things we can work on this offseason? He's checked off a lot of boxes, but maybe it's one of those things where, hey, man, like sometimes your team needs you to be more of that upbeat presence, that upbeat leader. And it may not always come natural to you, but you've got to find ways of bringing it out of other people. And you got to find ways of doing that as a leader. Even though it might be tough for you to do, because it's never really been who he is. He seems to be more of kind of a private guy or more to himself, maybe more introverted. And I think I'll say this about him. I know his teammates love him. I know his coaching staff, everyone loves him. Like that. I don't, as far as someone showing up as draft day and all that, that's his own choice of whoever's there and everything else. But
no, I just meant the movie, how it was like, hey, it's all about how popular a guy is. And that the criticism of him coming out of school was that he's very aloof and some people didn't view him as a leader. Anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No. I would say that was not my impression of him, kind of having called a number of his games and being around him. He's a super sharp guy. I mean, very, very smart. And maybe more introverted is the way I'd say it. And I'll say this to you, JD. Like, if you try to be something you're not in the NFL, dudes smell that out in a heartbeat. I mean, it's a different environment in the locker room. And I think he's always remained genuine. He's always remained who he is. And that's sometimes the toughest thing, I think, is when you have to put on a hat that you're not overly comfortable with, and maybe be a more vocal motivator when you're not the type of guy that needs that for yourself or haven't really been that as a leader in the past. Those are some of the things you got to work on and develop over the course of your career.
Yeah. So the Patriots, the big question for them coming into the postseason was strength of schedule. Hey, who have you beaten? Hey, can you prove it in the postseason? Do you feel like some of those questions were answered considering that Chargers offensive line and the way that they looked in that football game?
Well, I'll first start off by saying this. I hate the argument of strength of schedule in the NFL. All right, you only have 32 teams. So, the variations of differences in schedules that you play and all that, to me, the margins are much thinner than anyone on the outside sees. So, like, save that for college football or lower levels when there are more teams, there's more significance in actually the level of talent that you're playing against. In regards to NFL standards, I mean, this has been a team that's been hot this season. They've dominated. I think you saw them dominate last night really on both sides of the ball. They kind of controlled that game. I know they got off to a slow start in the first half, but they were able to ultimately pull away. I think we're undervaluing probably how good the Chargers defense is and what a tougher matchup that is given the weapons for New England. I think it's one of the reasons why Drake May ends up being the leading rusher because you're implementing things that I promise you, Josh McDaniels having been in a system with him and played for him, he doesn't have in his playbook. He's just not implementing a bunch of quarterback design runs when they get into a bear front and he's running speed option and Drake May, jukes out Khalil Mack off the edge with a little fake pitch and gets upfield. Like those things are new to this offense for Josh McDaniels and things that, again, he's bringing to it because of his capability as a passer and runner, but also what I think they needed to do in order to win this game. So I give some credit to the Chargers defense for hanging in there at times. Because I think this offense will be able to explode against certain matchups, and again, I don't have any reservations about where this Patriots team is. You just kind of wonder if it's too soon for someone with some of the youth that they have, but some of that can be kind of some of that blind ignorance that actually plays to your benefit when you get in the playoffs.
I love their energy. I love Vrabel on the sidelines, how demonstrative he is. But when you talk about authenticity, it doesn't feel forced. Like you're not cringing watching the way that he acts. You're going, yeah, you totally buy that he is a leader of men. I like their physicality on both sides. I thought that they ran the ball effectively and that Ramondre Stevenson, like if he holds on to the football, that's great. And then there is this added advantage of Drake May where, everyone loves comparing him to Josh Allen. And I get that because the arm strength and the ability to run. But in the pocket at times, he actually reminds me of Ben Roethlisberger, where he shrugs off sacks that you go, how many quarterbacks could shrug off a defensive tackle like that, hold on to the football, and then make a play downfield? I think the big question mark for him is how he balances that moving forward with some of the turnovers and knowing just kind of when he has to get rid of the football because he is so big, he is so strong. But the one thing that I think was, and again, good pass rush, credit to the Chargers, but the two fumbles in that game are the two things that I'm looking at if I'm Drake May and saying, how do you balance that as a quarterback where you're getting these brilliant runs where you do lead the team in rushing versus when you just kind of have to get rid of it and not risk turning the ball over trying to go one-on-one with a D tackle?
I think those are all experience things too, right? Like he's going to continue to keep learning that. I promise you, Josh McDaniels having that conversation with him today. Like, hey, this is playoff football. You don't have to necessarily go out there and always win the game. It's usually the plays there's going to be plays that lose you the game because you are turning the football over or you're not making the smart play. I mean, you could probably have made the case throughout the course of this past weekend's games. Maybe a number of teams are looking back saying maybe we should have just kicked the field goal there. I know there's a number of times I'm saying to Jim Harbaugh, dude, you're on the road. Like, just go take the points. Like, take the points. You don't need to go for it on fourth down every single time. And those are starting to be, it's almost, rebuffing the analytics crowd because it's kind of backfiring on some of these teams that aren't able to stay in games or allowing the game to get away from them, not making some of those decisions. So I'm sure they're having those conversations with Drake May about it. And this is something that he's going to continue to learn that, yes, he's got that playmaking ability, but you have to kind of know when to turn it on and turn it off. And fortunately, they were able to, win this game somewhat handily, despite those mistakes.
Yeah, I really liked him this week. Okay, Eagles-Niners. Second straight time I'm going to lead with the loser. Do you know how many times their quarterback was pressured out of his 37 dropbacks in this game?
I don't know. 4 times, 3 times?
Yeah, 6. 6 of 37 is the amount of times that this guy got pressured against a defense that pretty much everybody has carved in the second half because I don't know how many guys you could name on the Niners defense, but they keep calling out names. I think there was 3 that I knew who they were throughout the football game. Like multiple times they're flashing guys and I'm going, never heard of you before in my life, and I just watched the Seahawks play you. I don't know who you are. So congrats to the Niners, who I think were gutty, who toughed it out, who used incredible play calling and survived a Kittle injury that when it happened, it honestly felt to me like, man, the door is shut on this game. But I can't help coming away from this game and think, this one's about the Eagles, this is about their offensive coordinator, this is about their head coach, and that this is about their quarterback and the hard questions that they are going to face as a team during this offseason, despite winning a Super Bowl last year.
It's incredible to have the talent that they do, and despite not having Lane Johnson, still have one of the best offensive lines.
Yep.
Have a running back that goes for over 100 yards. Yet this is, this is the end result. Is you get a team that is the defending Super Bowl champs that is sent home, and honestly, I thought their defense played well enough, to be able to give them a shot. I mean, look, Kevin Patullo is the new offensive coordinator. I don't think he's going to make it after this. And
Yeah.
they've never been able to maximize Jalen Hurts, and it seems like AJ Brown's unhappy and he wants to move on and be somewhere else. And so they're probably going to lose one of their playmakers. It's hard to put your finger on what it is. I felt like when Jalen Hurts, if you watched his progression from Bama to Oklahoma to Philadelphia, there was improvement in his play from the pocket where he got better and better and better. And I now feel like we've hit a wall. And I don't know if that wall is, because he's been through so many different offensive coordinators and he's trying to work within the system. But, Patullo clearly in multiple occasions was running like the same play, almost the exact same play, like back to back in a series of drives. And you're going, all right, like that's a philosophy, but like not one that you really should use often at the NFL level. And they can't figure out how to take the top off of defense. Yeah, you've got Devontae Smith and AJ Brown.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the whole thing is confusing. I know it's been this way this entire season, and you've seen glimpses of what they're capable of, but never the full thing. So you don't want to call for a guy's job, but that is ultimately what they've done in the past. That's worked out for them when they moved on from Brian Johnson. He came in for 1 year to be the coordinator, didn't work out. That seems to be the most glaring, obvious thing. Is Nick Sirianni needs to find someone who can unleash their quarterback in Jalen Hurts and this offense. And I don't know, even with the way they're running the football, like, I don't know if you need to incorporate Jalen Hurts more in the rushing attack too. And if things aren't there in the passing game, just unleash that and run the ball down everyone's throats because you're able to. But clearly there's a disconnect and there's been a gap now in the growth for Hurts as a player playing from the pocket and wanting to push it down the field more and take more chances. Like there's almost a bit of conservatism that's occurring too. And it'd be one thing to your point about the pressure, if there was pressure, but I mean, I think Jawan Jennings had more passes downfield than Hurts did in this case.
He did.
So you're sitting there saying to yourself, what is happening? Why can't we do some of the things that other offenses are maximizing, like the 49ers? Not saying that they're necessarily stretching the field vertically all the times, but the reality is, you've got a quarterback who's not playing up to his potential, and we've seen it in the past. It's in there. I mean, we've seen how well he plays in these Super Bowls when he's up against some of the best quarterbacks in the league. So clearly there needs to be a change at the coordinator position, but at some point too, people are going to start pointing the finger at Sirianni. You know how this works.
Yep.
And they're going to start saying, is he the right guy for that? Whether it's right or wrong, that's how the story goes.
Jawan Jennings completed that one pass of 15 air yards. Jalen Hurts was 0 for 5 on passes of 15 air yards or more. And yes, a couple of drops by A.J. Brown. The one was egregious. The other one was kind of like a really tough adjustment where he had to catch the ball away from his body. But whatever, he's an NFL receiver and he's supposed to be one of the best in the NFL. So maybe you come up with that catch. But ultimately, this game to me, as bad as A.J. Brown may have played, as tough as some of the drops were for this team, I wasn't coming away from it going like, wow, Jalen Hurts played so well and his receivers let him down. I thought it was a combination of those two things. And with Hurts, the thing that really bothers me if I'm an Eagles fan is how many times he just will abandon a clean pocket quickly, boot out to the right, and cut off half the field, and then throw some pass down the sideline that is either threatening to be intercepted or just goes out of bounds and he's basically abandoned a play. And that's the question mark for him is he a kind of guy who's going to be able to age? Like this happened with Russell Wilson when he lost his legs a little bit. And I'm not saying that that's the same with him, but people question whether or not he could throw into the middle of the field. People question how many of the routes that he was going to be able to hit. And yeah, I think that that's going to be the question mark for him moving forward. To me, if I'm the Eagles, I run back Sirianni, I run back Hurts with a new offensive coordinator. But I thought Warren Sharp made a really great point on Twitter yesterday, which is if Sirianni was fired today, how many teams would be clamoring to hire him the way that they are for John Harbaugh right now, or the way that they are for Kevin Stefanski right now? I just don't see it. I don't think that that would be the case. So to me, I think he's actually on pretty thin ice, despite the Super Bowl success.
I think that's a great hypothetical to play out, but you look at his resume and you can chalk it up to Howie Roseman or Jeffrey Lurie and the Eagles organization. I could tell you the Browns would be on line one. The Giants would be on line two. Like there'd be teams lined up. I mean, hell, I think Baltimore would be on right in that mix too. So there'd be teams lined up to interview him, and I think look at trying to sign him on for the success that he's had. I mean, that stuff just doesn't come out of nowhere, and he's also won a Super Bowl. So I think we need to pump the brakes on that, because I think there's different organizational structures as to how head coaches delegate, and even though again we look at it offensively and say, well, this is an offensive minded head coach who hasn't been able to figure out at times his offensive coordinator. Like that's his structure. That's how it works. I personally don't believe that. And I think you'd be hard pressed to find an organization, especially one that's struggling, or in the case of the Browns, have never won a Super Bowl, that wouldn't be immediately trying to hire that guy to be their next head coach.
Bills, Jags, Josh Allen.
What a game.
Yeah, really, really fun game. But God, did you ever see the discrepancy between the two quarterbacks in this game? Like that was the story to me, is one team has the guy and the other team is like someone that, as you make that face, guys like you want to be the guy, and Trevor Lawrence, who just, he couldn't do it. He wasn't him. I can't help but feel like watching this game that was the biggest story to me, is how Josh Allen is just so much better than any quarterback in the AFC that's in the postseason right now, that having that advantage is going to feel the way that it did in that game, where you hand him the football with an opportunity to go win the game. And there's only really one guy I trust in the AFC to do that, and that's Josh Allen.
So you're putting that last interception on Lawrence?
I'm putting the whole game on Trevor Lawrence. Like,
okay, that's fine. That's fair. But I just, I don't care how good they are. They need some help. And I think you're going to see that too from Josh Allen the rest of this way. He's going to need some help too. And there are some big time places. I'm not saying anything you're saying is wrong. I mean, if you look at the AFC playoff picture, I think Drake May's close to him with how he's played this year. I mean, he's made a case for the MVP. But I think we all know why that if the Bills were to lose that game, right? Let's just play out this hypothetical.
Yeah.
If the Bills were to have lost that game, our storyline or narrative would be, is Sean McDermott the right guy for the job?
Yeah, huge
because they
disappointment.
do have Josh Allen, and that'd be the disappointment. So the fact that they won it now makes them truly that team that everyone's saying, well, if not this year, then when? Like, I think the pressure is no doubt still there. They don't have to face the Burrows, the Mahomes, the Lamar Jacksons to get through. We don't even know if they'll have to face an Aaron Rodgers-led Steelers team at some point, right? As far as how tonight's game's going to go. So if not now, then when? I think that's a fair thing to say. However, I don't think the team is as good around him as it has been. I think that's the tough part. Is there's the saying that defense wins championships, because I feel like when you get into this scenario, your quarterback can bring you there and it can get you only so far. Eventually, the defense has to step up and be able to show out. And we don't have to look any further than the Green Bay Packers, who I think offensively at times you might have said, hey, they did enough. But that's when you're really missing, Micah Parsons. You can't be the guy to get you a sack fumble to close out the game. And it allows a 25-point fourth quarter by the Bears to come back and win. So Josh Allen is the best quarterback probably in the entire playoffs, not just the AFC. But my concern is moving forward, like when you watch that game defensively, I don't know. Like, I don't know how much I trust them to be able to stop the run consistently, eliminate big plays, and not allow for, a challenging quarterback, someone, like a Drake May, to have these sort of impact like he can, and like we've seen, to go win him a football game too. So don't get me wrong. It was a great win, especially the way they did it. But, I think if that game could have easily gone the other way too, when it's all said and done.
So to me, like, the big thing in terms of being so impressed with Allen was, one, just the beating that he's taking, and still the fearlessness in which he plays with, right? Like, they need some short yardage plays. He's making it happen. He's hitting his hand off the helmet. They're talking about a foot injury that he's got coming into the game. And he really does feel like indestructible. He goes off for a second. What was it, the first quarter where he has to go to the blue tent? It was either the first or
Yeah, his
second
first quarter,
quarter.
first half.
Yeah, his
His
first
first
half, he
half.
goes to the blue
Yeah,
tent. I'm
first quarter.
thinking like, no, 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 no. And then you just see him on the sidelines. And I think kind of to my earlier point about Justin Herbert, how he looks versus a guy like Josh Allen. Again, very different personality types. Not everyone can lead the same way. But I just look at Josh Allen. He's sitting there. He's tough, and he's talking to guys. He's like, I'm fine. Don't worry about it. Not going to complain. He's not doing the hand thing too much. I love his game. But how many quarterbacks are making Shavers and Brandon Cooks and, Dalton Kincaid? If we put that cast of characters that the Bills have as their receiving core, and in a game where Cook couldn't do anything, like James Cook is completely irrelevant in this football game. The Jaguars neutralized him, and Josh Allen just said, I don't care. Whatever. Give me this cast of bums. That's a bum squad that they're throwing the ball to. And he's just making it work and carving a top defense on the road. I came away from this being like, yeah, man, Josh Allen, like this has to be your year. Like even with all the excuses that he has at his disposal with that rush defense, that wide receiving core, everything in front of him, he's able to overcome it all. And I don't think there's another quarterback in the playoffs that even comes close to that ability of just like raising the floor of a team the way that Allen did in that football game.
That's fair. And I think like Joe Brady, because he's their offensive coordinator too, he's putting him in some of these positions. He's going to get, a lot of interviews, or he should be getting some interviews for the next head coaching job, wherever that may be. Especially if you've got if I was the New York Giants, like he'd be a guy that I want to bring in and talk to because I feel like he could help develop Jackson Dart and you can put in some things to play to the strengths. But like to your point, like yeah, a lot of credit goes to him and how he's able to overcome some of the circumstances they're in. We're only through the wild card round.
Sure.
Like we'll see how it goes the next couple of games, because there's been like I look at the entire body of work of this team this season, and you still can kind of look back through the weeks and go, yeah, there's a few scars there that we haven't quite forgotten about. And how much can you go to the well that many times to have Josh Allen play Superman? Because that's kind of been what it's been in the past. Like I know they've had Diggs in the past, but also he's kind of disappeared in the playoffs, especially when he was with the Buffalo Bills. So when you really go back and look at that, you're saying we've seen this story before. It's whether or not the entire team can, come around to help him be able to get there to a Super Bowl and ultimately win it.
So the Jag side of this, I have it as huge blame for two parties involved. One is Lawrence, as I mentioned, and the other is Liam Cohen. Almost near the end of the third quarter, the Jaguars had 18 passes for less than 100 yards and only 8 runs, despite having 100 yards on the ground. Bigger piece of the blame pie, Liam Cohen's game planning, where he just kind of refused to run the football as much as he did, given its effectiveness, or Trevor Lawrence for the 2 interceptions, and honestly, a play on fourth down that I think that you should blame him for, where he drags the shin and turns the ball over.
Yeah, the fourth down play was tough because I think he felt like he was just making a play to go get it, and he probably was there. Which again, I mean, he's a great athlete. I'm not sure if that one's the one he's playing over his head. The one interception, I don't really put it on him there at the end either.
Really?
So, yeah, I mean, he threw the awful one earlier in the game, which that was just bad read, bad pass, everything. But when you're talking about the second one, to me, I didn't feel like it was all on him. So
who's it on?
I would. I mean, you could put it on Lawrence because it goes on a stat sheet. That's ultimately what always ends up happening. But if you don't want to put it on the receiver too, and being part of that, then okay. But like it looked like there was a little more miscommunication there. What was going on? I would just say this: the hard thing about the run pass play selection, if you're a good offensive coordinator, you're not going to run into a loaded box. And then I'm not saying that they're necessarily playing predominantly high post high safety defense. I haven't been able to break down that game yet, but that has been traditionally the construct or the structure of Sean McDermott's defense. So there's more often than not, especially when you're in a 3 wide receiver set, an extra defender in the box, kind of forcing you to say, we're more apt to want to throw the football. So the fact that they didn't have more success in doing so is more the concerning part for me, not necessarily the run pass play selection. Now there's obviously the point you're making is when you have production with it, you can go with it. And I played for enough teams in the NFL to know too, there's some offensive coordinators who don't care if there's an extra defender in the box. They'll say to you, well, hey, that's what the running backs get paid to, because they're paid to make that guy miss. But schematically speaking on paper, if you're kind of running uphill, which isn't what you're designed to do. So again, I don't when you have a game that ends like that, like, yeah, ultimately the quarterback and coach, they always end up taking the blame because those are the two that are always going to be those figureheads of your organization. And I think it's fair, because this game was always, slated as a matchup between Josh Allen and Trevor Lawrence. So Trevor Lawrence is going to take ultimately the L for it. But I do feel like there's a bit more to this sort of game. Like there's multiple plays we could probably dissect through the course of watching film and say, yeah, they missed a little bit here, they missed a little bit here. Like, what was the play selection here on third down? I don't know that I'm walking away like too upset about the fact that they didn't run the football more. Like, I don't know that that was necessarily the identity of this team, getting to the playoffs and going on the epic run that they went on to finish the season.
Yeah, listen, I don't have your eye, and I'm also not an all 22 guy who's going to break this down through the standpoint of like, well, and actually the tight end on this route, he didn't, I'm not that guy. All I can tell you is it felt like the Jags completely controlled the edge. That every time they were running the ball outside, it was for chunks. And Etienne touched the ball 3 times on rushes in the first half of that football game. That's a guy who's a 1,000-yard rusher going up against the 30th ranked rush defense in the NFL. And to me, I think that, like, I always think about the biggest head coaching you get in your head situation is the Seahawks on the 1-yard line with Marshawn Lynch, and Bill Belichick lets the clock run down, right? He goes, nope, we're not taking a timeout. We're going to make you overthink it. And they did. They overthunk it, and they decide to throw a pass to a wide receiver that's like their third guy, and it gets intercepted by Malcolm Butler. And that's the way that I felt about that game, which is Sean McDermott, despite the fact that, their rush defense was terrible, he trusted his pass defense, which was elite, and he kind of baited the other opposing offensive coordinator who is looking at it the way that you are, where he's like, well, we don't want to run into loaded boxes. Well, every time you're running into loaded boxes, you're picking up 8, sometimes 20-yard chunk plays down the field, and you just didn't utilize it. And instead, you're giving Josh Allen more and more possessions, and eventually, like, what's going to happen is what happened in the end of that football game where he scores 2 touchdowns on the final 2 drives that he's got possession of the ball. I thought they could have shortened the game. I thought that they could have just kind of not broken the Bills necessarily, but the way that they were running it with the effectiveness in which they were, I can't help but think that it would have tired out that defense, that it would have forced them to make the adjustments and then opened things up in the play action game that would have made things a little bit easier for Trevor Lawrence rather than a lot of their series starting out with pass, 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 and all of them missing. And to the Lawrence piece of this, for me anyways, just from what I saw a guy who floated a lot of footballs, like a couple that were tipped at the line.
That's fair.
But not really precision down the field passing, like a lot of balls that kind of hung up there and allowed the Bills defensive backs to kind of scoop in there and either deflect them, which is what happened with Trey White, who looked like he kind of got back in a time machine in that football game. And I'm like, well, why is it happening? Because I just didn't think that the throws were very good. I did not like Trevor Lawrence's game. I did not think it was like even B-plus football game. It's like you threw 2 interceptions. One of them was egregious. You had a couple of other tip balls that could have been taken for interceptions. And like you said, it could have been miscommunication on the final play of the game. But ultimately, like, he throws another kind of floaty ball up the middle of the field to close it, and it gets picked off by a top-tier pass defense.
It felt like he was a bit nervous. I think, like, watching the beginning of the game, like you could sense maybe that, I don't know if it's just the matchup, the stakes of the game, being home, everything else. Like, I think that's fair, to look at it from that standpoint. Ultimately, like, I didn't feel like watching the game. I felt like their rush pass play selection. I mean, they definitely got into a trend and a pattern, but I also, again, feel like that's kind of what this team has been. I mean, does Liam Combs strike you as the type of head coach that's going to change who they've been or how they've gotten to this point? That's always one of those things you kind of battle. Is if you're going to go down swinging, you're probably going to go down with what's got you there. I don't think, again, we kind of look at them as a team that was led necessarily by the rushing attack. I mean, Etienne's been productive this year, but to your point, maybe that's, like, looking back on it, that might be one of the regrets for Liam Cohen for sure.
Yeah,
like getting the ball to Etienne more, Tootin for that matter, and letting those guys run despite what they're being faced with. Liam Cohen doesn't strike me as the type of coach that walks into a game, especially as an offensive minded head coach, and says, we want to limit your quarterback's possessions.
Sure.
Like, he's a former quarterback. Like, he's thinking in his mind, we're going to outscore you and we're going to make you have to go toe to toe with us. And if we have the ball last, we're going to win this game. That's how I think his mentality was in this game. That's how I feel like he handles most games he walks into.
Okay. Bears, Packers. I don't even know where to begin with this, I'll be honest, because this is one of the craziest games I've ever seen in terms of first half thinking, wow, the Bears just got completely exposed, and everything that the critics said about the horseshoe up their ass was totally correct. Just And I'm texting my Bears fans buddies being like, are we sure the moment isn't too big for Ben Johnson? Right? Because he has that 1 4th down on, I think, his own like 38, where it's 4th and 5 and takes the timeout. Then he comes out of it. He tries to go for it. Complete failure. Caleb Williams not doing anything. They just can't get anything going. And Jordan Love is picking them apart. And then the fourth quarter happens. And again, like, I don't know what to say about this. Like, yes, credit to Ben Johnson, credit to Caleb Williams, who made, who threw, I think, 48 passes in this game and completed half of them. 2 missed field goals and a missed extra point. Where does the blame pie lay for you? Because I'll give credit to the Bears in a second here and how you're feeling about them, but it's impossible to blow a 21-3 lead and not lead with the team that blew that and had the ball at the start of the second half.
And led by a head coach who was a part of a 28-3 collapse in the Super Bowl for Atlanta and New England, right? So LaFleur's seen it before. He's been a part of it before. I'll go back to what I said earlier. This is where you look at some of the defensive pieces, whether it's Wyatt or Micah Parsons or whoever else you want to point to, that they were missing. They needed someone to come in there and make a game-changing play on defense, and they just didn't have that guy. And so while Caleb Williams can scramble around and buy time and make the big play downfield, as we saw him kind of do in the fourth quarter, you didn't have that weapon on your defense. So it's definitely more of a collapse than anything else. It's hard to put this at all on Jordan Love. I mean, I thought he played for the most part almost a pretty spectacular game. It seemed like when they needed to kind of run the football, they had a hard time, doing so. It feels like when the Bears are to the point now, I think this is kind of powerful, where they almost just have this sense of belief in when they get in these scenarios, like they're going to find a way to win.
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty remarkable. But for the Packers, I don't think there's any doubt about it. I think you look at how their defenses has changed with Parsons left, less pressures. They've upticked the blitz rate. They're not really getting home quite as much. I mean, all those things to me had added up to a team that I think almost felt like maybe they were kind of comfortable trying to hold on to the 21-6 lead instead of like staying aggressive. Like that's really the only like criticism I can look back on for the Packers side and see it, because I'd like to give credit to the Bears. I'd like to give credit to what they're able to accomplish in the fourth quarter to come back and win this thing.
So do you fire LaFleur?
Well, no. I mean, they're going to be agreeing to an extension here probably the next couple of days. Look, he's had one season where they didn't make the playoffs, one losing season. They went 8-9, I believe. You'd be really hard pressed unless you knew for sure you have an upgrade at the coaching position. And maybe you say that upgrade's John Harbaugh, right? Because he's the name everyone wants to talk about. I mean, if I was going to move on to someone, it'd be Stefanski. Like Stefanski is a guy that I think has always done more with less. And you put him in that organization, like he's going to be your head coach for a long period of time. But it would still be hard to justify, especially for an organization where you don't have a singular owner, JD. It's obviously, there's a board it's owned by a bunch of shareholders. So they don't make decisions that are irrational or as emotional. I mean, this thing kind of takes a while to process. And in this case, I think they're going to let cooler heads prevail and say, let's get back healthy. Let's get back to the team that we thought we were going to be coming into the season when we had Micah Parsons on defense. They may be having to replace their defensive coordinator. Jeff Hafley's getting a lot of interviews, so there could be some change. But I don't think moving on from Matt LaFleur makes a lot of sense, given the season that they had. And just because you're looking at this kind of singular loss and saying, okay, it was an epic failure. I think next year, if they miss the playoffs or maybe this happens again, now some of those fears and concerns are warranted.
I just wonder about the trauma of a loss like that. And like
sure.
This isn't the first collapse for this guy.
But also like comparing them to, sure, but comparing them, I mean, he's a quarterback coach in Atlanta, so I'm not sure how much of an impact he would have had.
No, but even with the Packers, like they lost that game to the Bears this season too, where they had a huge lead. Like this was kind of one of the stories of their year where they couldn't protect it late. And yes, the defense, but also I think as an offensive coach, like I know you made the point earlier about Liam Cohen, where you go, I'm not thinking about limiting possessions, but I think when you're up 21-6 and you do have that defense, there has to be a part of you that's thinking like, we need some clock killing drives here. And yeah,
But it's not the same defense.
yeah.
I view the Packers like coming into the playoffs similar to what the Chargers were.
Mhm.
Like they kind of got in there, but it's like, do they really feel like they're built or they're that team to be able to go do it? I think not when you don't have your best player in Micah Parsons out there, and along with others, and now even a 100% healthy offensive line. So even though they're a playoff team, like I don't feel like they viewed themselves as that. And I'm not saying that that thought's running through his head during the course of the game while he's calling plays or they're managing the game. But I think if we're being honest with ourselves, like big picture, when we talk about like, do they move on from LaFleur? I just think given the things that they've had to, deal with over the course of the last few weeks with some injuries, you look at it and just go, probably not the year to like pull the rug from out underneath this and start over again. And I know it feels like an epic collapse, which it was, but I think you give it a little bit more time. I mean, that collapse happened for Dan Quinn. I believe he coached the team for at least 2 more years,
Mhm.
maybe even 3 after that in Atlanta. I mean, it wasn't like they just were like, oh,
Yep.
yep, can't do this anymore. Let's move on from the guy that just won the NFC Championship. So there'll be a period of time to see if they can overcome it. I think the bigger question is, like, what does Matt LaFleur do to be able to get his team out of that mindset of oh, here we go again? Like, no 21-6 lead is safe going into a fourth quarter anymore. Because that was something that ultimately the Falcons could never get over. And it ended up being the demise of Dan Quinn during his time as a head coach there.
And I will say, because at least it is the one fair piece of this, is like if you have a kicker like if Mason Crosby's in that game, it's
Right.
over. McManus, you don't have to criticize him for the 51-yarder that he missed in Soldier Field. You're like, okay,
Right.
fine at the half, but missing an extra point, if he makes that, the Packers kick the field goal to tie it at the end of the game. And then
Right.
the 44-yarder is just like a pure shank job that, yeah, also changes the course of that game, makes it a 7-point lead, and all of a sudden the Bears go down and tie, and then they have an opportunity to go walk it off and win it. So, yeah, kicking does matter, and that was, like, you could say 7 points. Really, I think it's 4. But even still, that 4 points was the difference in the football game. Like, that's the tie.
I think it's interesting too, talk about the early kick that he missed, because he
Mhm.
had gotten the opportunity to kick it, before they had the stoppage. So and he makes it. And so
Mhm.
you're kind of thinking to yourself, okay, I wonder if he relaxed. I wonder if he felt good about the line that he had on, given the wind at Soldier Field. Either way, like there's all that mental game that plays into the kickers. Like I'd love to be able to ask him and say, like, what happened when second chance around
Ugh.
it? If you're at the free throw line, you hit the first one, typically you feel pretty damn confident about hitting the
Yeah.
next one. And in this case, again, longer field goal, and we kind of, you mentioned that, but I still look at it and go, well, you made it. I mean, it wasn't like it was like a distance issue or anything else, and you played the win right. Maybe the snap, maybe it was the hole. I mean, who knows? But the kicking game was the other thing that you hate to put it on that, but that's probably the one thing you kind of come out of this saying, like, yeah, that might have been a bit of an Achilles heel there too.
Well, and to give the Bears credit, the one thing that I will say about this game is like came out of it with mixed emotions about Caleb Williams because God, there were so many passes that he just missed. And there are many times where he breaks contain and he goes outside the pocket and he throws just like a total whiff ball. But the one play that he made where he booted to the left and he avoids a
Yeah.
sack and he's like getting hit and falling down and he throws a dot to the end, like to a receiver 30 yards downfield. I went, this is why they come back in football games. Is I don't know if there's a quarterback with his athleticism and arm in the NFL and the confidence that gives you as a team when you are trailing, that he is just going to take stab after stab after stab down the field. And if you open the door even a crack for that guy, like he's got an opportunity to make you pay. So I think overall, like, yeah, we can criticize a lot of the misses in the first 3 quarters of the game for him, but just it was a reminder of how important talent is in this league and just having that much ability, how much it offers you as a football team when you are in those kind of situations where you just need to throw the ball.
The play you're referring to, I think we'd agree, is a generational talented play. And
Yeah.
that's what he was deemed as, coming out in the draft. That's what I think why one of the reasons why he's a perfect combination for Ben Johnson and him. Now I'm by no means is he, near where I think Ben Johnson wants him to be, because you had those first 3 quarters and you see those inconsistencies in his play. But once he continues to refine his game within this offense, and as the trust with Ben Johnson only grows from here, I think he's going to be so dangerous,
Yep.
because when he starts doing the little things and the easy things consistently really, really well, we've already seen that he can do like those spectacular things that almost no one else can do, maybe besides Mahomes or, one or two others, at Josh Allen. Like, that's about it. I mean, he has a rarefied arm talent as far as off platform, throwing on the run, awkward body throws. I mean, you don't see it. I mean, he almost had both feet off the ground and still able to get the ball there. So generational is what he was deemed to be. Generational is what that play was and defined as. I think if you're a viewer and you're like, I have no idea like what that looks like. Well, there's an example of that. And that's why I think it's so dangerous to think about not just what this Bears team could be this year, because I think they've got a strong sense of belief of being able to come back in any game based on how their season's gone. But really moving forward, just like what Caleb Williams is going to be in this league. As we look at an injured Patrick Mahomes and a Kansas City Chiefs team that's probably not going to have Travis Kelce at some point, Andy Reid's going to hang it up. Like, if you're looking at, hey, what offense should we watch? It's going to be passing the torch.
Yeah, that one.
Probably the Bears. And by the way, have we ever said that?
No.
Like, in the history of the Bears organization, probably not since like Walter Payton was that running back where you want to watch him for the offense. But I think that's what this team is going to be moving forward this year and then in the coming years.
We got to go. We couldn't. I didn't fit in Rams and Panthers. You got 1 minute.
Which side of that were you on? Because a lot of people looked at and said, like, there's no way the Panthers should be in this.
Yeah. You loved it. You were Mr. Panther. You believed.
I'm telling you, like, well, because I think there's something about that team where they're going to play that game close, maybe have a shot to win. Stafford's hand, though, is a big concern. And it's a concern because of, the elements they might be in, as well as just overall how he's able to recover. I know there's no structural damage, but something to keep an eye on for sure for this upcoming week.
I will say that my only takeaways were Bryce Young absolutely gets that other year. And I'm a little shaken if I'm a Rams fan. Like, I'm not as confident after that one as I was heading into the playoffs. Anyway, Brady Quinn, our Monday morning insider, Fox NFL, and former NFL QB. Thanks for making time, buddy. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Shady.
See you, pal. All right, quick break. Come back. Gutsy Raptors win. Gonna be quick here. I got Jared Carrabis on the other side of the break. Talk about the shuffling of the American League East in terms of who are the dominant powers moving forward. And, yeah, a really gutsy win for the Raptors last night. Truly, I'm going to talk about this more later. But they've got one of the weirdest stats going right now, which is, the guy sent this to me. They're 7-0 this year when they shoot below 26% from the three-point range, which I don't think is a sustainable trend by any stretch of the imagination. But what I think it illustrates is there is a toughness to this team that is materially different than in years past. And it actually does remind me of some throwback Raptors teams. Like, they're without Brandon Ingram. They're without Jakob Poeltl. They're without R.J. Barrett. And they're playing the Philadelphia 76ers who, it's a huge game in the standings. And they're down 4 points with, 19 seconds left? And they find a way to tie it and send it to overtime. And so there's some Barnes stuff in this. I think that having those depth guys who come in and are dying for minutes and wanting to compete in a massive game like this matters at this juncture of the season. But the one thing I really love about this Raptors team, you can talk about all the flaws they have, and there are many, and they do face some pretty big fundamental questions for the team, but there's a toughness to them and a don't give up to them that is really, really impressive and should be lauded. Anyways, quick break and Jared Carrabis. So I don't really love it when shows invite me on when things are going bad for my teams. Only when they don't invite me when things are going well for my teams. And I promise, because I really do like our next guest, he's one of my favorites on that joins the show, that this is not purely just like a Red Sox mocking segment, okay? Like, there are real implications for the American League East, and there are real implications for one of what is supposed to be, I know you guys don't view it this way, but the Blue Jays' biggest rivals. Jared Carrabis of Baseball is Dead and the Section 10 podcast joins me now. Alex Bregman signed a deal with the Chicago Cubs yesterday, and Red Sox Twitter is all over my feed because this is about as pissed off as I've seen a fan base in a very long time. You guys move Rafael Devers because you need Alex Bregman to play third base. Move off a ton of money in order to do so. And Bregman opts out, but the thinking is, don't worry, he's going to come back. And now you traded away a third baseman and let a third baseman walk. There's a huge hole at that position. And I just checked. You guys are 23rd in baseball. The Boston Red Sox, 23rd in baseball on how much revenue they spend on players. Where do we even begin with this? Because this is a super layered conversation, but I guess the first one is just disappointment in the organization.
Yeah, I saw that report yesterday from, I think it was Buster Olney, saying that there's disappointment abound in the Red Sox organization. And it's like, well,
yeah.
You know, sure, I understand that you're disappointed, but this is all self-inflicted.
Sure.
You know, I think when you go back to the start of all this, they mishandled the Devers situation right out the gate. You know, it's not that they didn't tell him. I think they lied to him. I think, you know, they were looking at Devers saying, no, like, you know, of course, like, we're going to kick the tires on a top free agent. Like, that doesn't mean that we're going to go out and sign him. And then they did. And then Devers shows up to spring training and he's like, well, you know, because Cora was talking about having Bregman be a second baseman. He's like, I think he can be a Gold Glove second baseman. So if I'm Devers, I'm like, all right, cool. Like, I'm still playing third base. He's going to be a second baseman. Then you show up to spring training and Bregman never took a ground ball at second base. Not one. I mean, he was over at third base the entire time. So now I'm looking around being like, all right, yeah, this doesn't seem like what you told me was going to go down. And I believe Devers, like, when we got down to Fort Myers, he was not playing in games, which was, I mean, interpreted as some sort of a protest, and understandably so, because when we got there, we would go down to like JetBlue and go in the press box when no one else was there. And he was taking batting practice. He was just fine. Like, he was launching balls over the wall. So immediately, you know, there's an issue here. And then you start to hear that, you know, Craig Breslow doesn't love the Devers contract, and that even if there wasn't an issue with the positions of third base, DH, first base, what have you with Devers, that he would have looked to have moved Devers at some point, regardless of whether or not there was tension and hurt feelings and what have you. So that was all self-inflicted by the Boston Red Sox. Then after the Devers trade, you know, you basically, without putting the C on his chest, you make Alex Bregman the captain of the Boston Red Sox. Like, for what the team is putting out there in terms of, you know, his leadership and how valuable he is off the field, you know, talking to the young players, molding them into the superstars that they're supposed to become. Now it's like, all right, well, that's a lot of leverage given up, don't you think? You know, like a guy that can opt out at the end of the year. This is a 1-year deal. And so he does inevitably opt out of the remaining 2 years of his contract. And next thing you know, my first instinct going into the offseason was they're going to get this done early, because they have to, right? Like, it would be dumb not to, you know, just write the check. Be like, hey, what's the number? What's it going to take? Get that done in November, maybe early December, so that you can continue to have the offseason that you need to have. Because at the end of the day, if you bring Bregman back, you're just retaining the team that you had last year that made it to the wild card round and got eliminated. You won one game in the postseason last year. So all you're doing is getting back to the team you were last year by bringing back Bregman. So I figured that's something that you get done super early, so you can focus on how do we make the team better than it was last year. Well, now you don't have Bregman, and Bregman is a Chicago Cub. And Scott Boras did what Scott Boras does, and he gets the best deal. And, you know, I'm sure there's going to be some sort of introductory press conference where Alex Bregman sits in front of a podium and says, it's my dream to play for the Chicago Cubs. Sure. And it's like, every player is going to say that. And I don't hate the player, hate the game. Like, you've got to endear yourself to the fan base. But it was a bid. It was a bid. And he was a hired gun, and the Red Sox lost out on the bidding.
Well, it looks like the bidding came down to $10 million and a no-trade clause, which is what would make
and deferred money.
Yeah, some deferred money, which, by the way, like, yeah, there's a conversation about that, too, because I think $70 million of the 170 that he signed for, or 175 that he signed for, is deferred money, which, like, that's pretty hefty chunk for one of the guys that was viewed as one of the only great remaining free agents, one of the four. Yes, an older player, and he wanted some term and blah, 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 but ultimately that is a lot. But yeah, if I'm looking right now, and the Red Sox have a payroll that's over, like the Yankees are paying more than $100 million next season than the Red Sox are. You've seen the Jays jump over the Red Sox when it comes to payroll. And yeah, I just, if you're telling me 5 years ago, 6 years ago, that the Boston Red Sox, it's coming down to $10 million, or they're going to lose out on one of their marquee free agents, a guy that's, they kind of, like you said, just made the captain of the Red Sox, I would have thought, okay, that's kind of a no-brainer. And I guess in all of this, there's two fears, right? Like the Breslow of it all has been not great. And I know you guys hate his guts right now. And yeah, I see a lot of memes. I see a lot of memes with him basically AI'd into the faces of various dictators. Like he's not well liked in Boston. But how much of this is being put on ownership? Because I really do feel like one of the things I want to talk to you about today is, listen, I don't want to try to like take a victory lap on spending. But one of the things that you feel best about as a Blue Jays fan right now is it really does feel like the business has changed for the Toronto Blue Jays. That it isn't just, hey, it's a year of spending. Maybe this year they exceed what they're going to be doing year over year. But ultimately, there is a real business model now for the Blue Jays being one of the bigger spenders in all of baseball. And certainly right now looks like the number 2 in the American League East. And I feel like there is actually like a power dynamic shift here with the Red Sox where this is now a large enough sample size of their spending where I'm looking at it and going, I don't know if it goes Yankees, Red Sox anymore. I kind of do feel like it goes Yankees, Blue Jays, and then the Red Sox are the wild card team.
I happen to agree with you. And what I said on the podcast yesterday was the Red Sox are a big market team that are operating like a mid-market team. Like that's just how they're operating. Like 2018, they had the highest payroll in baseball. They won the World Series. They had their winningest season in franchise history. But ever since then, it's been, how do we cut payroll? You know, like the following year, at the end of that year, 2019, that's when they traded Mookie Betts. And that was a salary dump. Like they attached Mookie Betts to David Price to get out from that contract. Mookie Betts was coming up on free agency, and they approached him with, you know, a couple of offers, and he just countered with something that was, you know, far greater than what they had offered him. So they were like, all right, well, he's got to go. Too much money. And then they don't like the Devers deal. You finally get a guy who wants to stay here and accepts your offer in Rafael Devers. You trade him because you don't like that contract. So they are very much operating like a mid-market team. They'll tell you that they're not, though. They'll tell you, you know, oh, like, look at how much money we have committed to the team and look at how much money we spend year over year. And it's like, that's great, but like, you're not spending the way the Boston Red Sox should be spending. Like you're, you know, like you can't just be like, oh, we're at the bottom of the top 10. That's not that. I mean, I get it. Like, it sounds super greedy. Like, if I'm a Pittsburgh Pirates fan, I'm sitting here being like, dude, shut up. Like, what are you, like, you're complaining about being at the, you know, where we would dream to be. I get it. But the difference is you're a Pirates fan. I'm a Red Sox fan. And Red Sox fans, we were conditioned to being not just top 10, but like a top 5 payroll in Major League Baseball. And a lot of that is, you know, teams like the Mets and the Dodgers, you know, they've kind of emerged. It used to be, you probably remember the days of
course.
It was the Yankees and everybody else. And if there was a big free agent out there, you'd be like, all right, well, good luck in New York. You know, you're obviously, that's where you're going to go. Like, who else is going to be able to top their offer for this player? But now, you know, the field has widened in terms of the real big spenders, but the Red Sox were one of those teams. And I've always beaten the drum of the Blue Jays should be at the top of the league in spending. You know, the Rogers, like we're talking billions upon, like one of the richest owners or ownership groups in professional sports. You know, I remember going back to the Garrett Cole sweepstakes. I was like, why won't the Blue Jays just sign Garrett Cole? You know, like they've got all these, like the young core is coming. Add a bona fide stud ace to that group and see what happens. But they were never in the mix. So I'm actually, as a Red Sox guy, I'm happy the Blue Jays are spending the way that they should be spending, because isn't that the whole point of owning a team, is to, you know, to spend the way that you financially are allowed to spend? I don't know.
Yeah, well, this is the confusing part for me when it comes to the Red Sox, is like, you don't just own a team. Like, to extend your Pirates analogy, like, okay, sure, if you're the Pirates owner, maybe there's an added impetus of you own this team and now you can take them from irrelevancy to something through spending and just be loved. But I think this is a Bill Simmons point about the sports owners, where it's, you don't really know who's on the Forbes 500 list unless they own a sports franchise or they are one of the 3 richest people on planet Earth, right? Like, you know who Elon Musk is because he owns Twitter and he created Tesla. You know who Bill Gates is because he created Microsoft. But outside of that, like, you could tell me 20 billionaires that I would not know. But if they own a sport team, I know that they do. Like, I know who they are. So the thought is, like, you own the Red Sox because you want to be covered in glory. You want to be able to say, like, I have a civic give back here. And for a team to reported last season, you guys made $574 million in revenue, and your payroll is under $300 million. I just, that to me would be more irksome than anything that Craig Breslow is doing, because eventually I would want ownership to step in here and be like, hey, we're not doing salary dumps. And if this guy wants $10 more million so that we don't take a step back next season, we're absolutely doing that. And to, look at you guys losing the wild card, the Jays' response, and granted, I hope their offseason isn't done yet, but they come a cleat away from winning a World Series. And the response is, well, we're going to go out in free agency and spend a ton of cash. We're going to give back a lot of the $100 million that we made over the postseason run because we want to remain competitive. You guys just lost to your hated rival in a wild card game. A kid from Boston, killed you guys.
Walpole.
Yeah, whatever. And
we don't claim him.
But then the response, though, is to spend less money. And, like, this kind of gets me into the Bo Bichette thing. So now I'm seeing, well, Bo Bichette to the Red Sox, and Blue Jays fans are terrified that Bo Bichette's going to go to the Red Sox. But the way that I'm looking at this is through another Boston sports analogy. Remember when the Danny Ainge traded Isaiah Thomas after he played on one leg? And there was a real down perception of the Boston Celtics, like, good luck ever signing a free agent. And luckily, they made some incredible trades to bring in Tatum and bring in Brown through the draft. But there was a moment there where players around the league were no longer looking at the Boston Celtics as like a premier franchise in the NBA because they didn't think they could trust that organization. And if I'm Bo Bichette and I'm signing a contract with the Boston Red Sox, I'm saying, wait, you want me to take deferrals? You don't want me to take a no-move clause? Like, you just got rid of Rafi Devers and you let Alex Bregman walk. Why would I want to be coming here to a team that obviously is worse on paper, but also has treated its players this way over the last couple of seasons?
It's a very fair question. I think unfairly, it's almost like, oh, but you get to play with Roman Anthony and Marcelo Myers here, Christian Campbell. Sure. It's like we have this really exciting young core, and you can remember like when you were part of a really young, exciting core in Toronto. Yeah. So why don't you come over to Boston and like you can be the veteran that kind of leads them. It's at the end of the day, it's going to come down to dollars, and that's why I have zero faith that Bo Bichette will be a Boston Red Sox player at any point. I think he's bound for Philly or a return to Toronto. I don't know. It's not going to be Boston. I have no faith that it's going to be the Red Sox. Like they wouldn't pony up and go the extra mile for a guy that they know came into their house and performed and made a huge impact throughout the entire clubhouse. They wouldn't pony up for that guy. So why would they pony up for a player that they don't know that is comparable, I guess, in terms of offense, but is not on par defensively? Like, we're talking about someone that's going to move positions and play second base probably if he came to Boston. I would love to have Bo Bichette. I love Bo. I've been a big fan since he got called up. I have zero faith that the Red Sox will do what it takes to contend with Dave Dombrowski and his aggressive spending. Or like Dave Dombrowski is just a guy that like when he wants a player, he's like he goes out and gets the player. That's his MO. He's always been that way. So far, like Craig Breslow has made some nice trades. No doubt about it. He's made some nice trades in the Garrett Crochet trade specifically. He ended up giving him the extension. But in his free agency record, what's he done there? Like the Red Sox have spent $0, JD. Zero. Like you spent more on your coffee this morning than the Red Sox have spent in free agency this winter. That's just a fact. So yeah, like I have, if you're a Toronto Blue Jay fan watching this right now, you don't have to worry about him coming to Boston. Maybe the Yankees. I'm not saying that you don't have to worry about him signing elsewhere in the division, but it ain't going to be Fenway Park.
Yeah, I'm shocked that this is the state of the Red Sox with free agents. You're right. The field has expanded. It is now the Mets. It is now the Dodgers. It is now the Blue Jays. It is the Phillies. It's the Yankees. But it's crazy to me how absent the Red Sox feel right now in terms of threatening places for marquee free agents, and even looking at it moving forward and saying, okay, you've got a good prospect pool and maybe they can trade for a player, but yeah, you're augmenting a team that last year had flaws, and you're asking a lot of production from guys who have not quite yet proven it over the course of a major league season. So yeah, I just don't really like the state. That said, so you see that contract for Bregman, 175, $70 million deferred. Does that make you think about anything in terms of the market for Tucker, the market for Bellinger, like the Bo Bichette? What does that tell you about the remaining core of free agents?
I think some of them are overshooting. If the report's correct that Bo wants 300, I don't know that anyone's going to give a guy $300 million who probably will be changing positions almost immediately.
No shot.
There's never been a $300 million second baseman. So I don't know that he'll be the first. With Kyle Tucker, his market is very interesting to me. And I do think that there is something to the fact that he's still out there. Like, I feel like the market is the Jays, and I'm kind of just waiting for that announcement of breaking news. It's a 9-year deal or a 7-8-year deal, Kyle Tucker to Toronto, or I'm waiting for the breaking news tweet where it's like, hey, it's a 3 or a 4-year deal with, opt-outs, whatever, with the Dodgers.
Yeah.
Or I guess the Mets. I don't know. The Mets should be the move, but if I'm Kyle Tucker and I have the option to sign with Toronto or LA, I don't know why I would go to the Mets right now. But I expect them to be in there. But yeah, I think it's going to either be like long-term with Toronto or a short-term with opt-outs kind of deal with the Dodgers. And like in terms of just like the dollars, I guess, I don't know. He keeps getting compared to JD Drew, where it's like, yeah, really talented player, but we don't know if he loves baseball.
I
We don't know
hate
how he
that.
handles the media. Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
the stuff, and I've heard this from more than one person, like the whole we don't know how much he loves baseball thing. And maybe it's because we're so close to Rendon, but that terrifies me. Like, and I don't think he is that. I think Rendon is truly a one of one, right? Where it's like when he got cut, I went through his most famous quotes. There's like 45 of them where he talked about hating baseball. This wasn't like a one-time thing where he slipped up to the media and said something stupid. He doubled down, tripled down, quadrupled down, 45 times it down about his lack of passion for the game. But yeah, I'm always a little terrified giving no incentives or like a huge money set you up for life deal when the book is, hey, he's not 10 toes down as just a pure baseball player. He views himself as other things. That said, at this point, like given where the Blue Jays are at, everybody's dying for the guy, and I'll deal with that problem as it comes. Like I'll have you back on in 2 years and go, yeah, this contract was a massive mistake. I can't stand this guy, over not paying him that deal and coming into the season losing out on his sweepstakes so that the Dodgers got better. Last thing, you got to run. I'm really nervous about Rob Manfred talking about splitting up the seasons and this midseason tournament thing. And
agreed.
He's done some tinkering to the game that has worked so well. I'm worried that another basketball analogy, that he's going to heat check and that he's like, yeah, listen, I've hit these shots. Trust me, I'm going to hit another one. And he's going to, I'm not even over exaggerating when I say splitting up the season and adding a midseason tournament to me is destroying the game.
I'm with you. I don't like the idea.
It's a horrible
and I'm
idea.
not a baseball purist. I'm not a baseball purist at all. Like I'm all like the rule changes so far, the Ghost Runner, excuse me. Yeah, I'm into it. But changing up the schedule, and even they've already changed up the schedule. Like you went from making interleague this sacred special thing to just everyone plays everyone, and that's how it is. I think doing this, I don't like it for I don't care about other sports, but I obviously like loosely pay attention to other sports. I think the NBA tournament's weird. Celebrating some, like you celebrate the World Series. Like that's why it's there. It's supposed to be this great unattainable climb the mountain type deal. But like, what would we do if we go into the season and there's some mid-season tournament that I don't know, it's like the Diamondbacks win it. And it's like,
I don't care.
okay, cool. Like, you're just gonna get made fun of. Like, yeah, but it's not the World Series. Then the Dodgers go on and three-peat, and it's like, yeah, like that's what everyone's playing for is the World Series. Like, I don't know. I think it's stupid. I'm not into it, and I'm not someone that opposes rule changes right out the gate and then warms up to them later. Like, I think for the most part, everything that Major League Baseball has implemented for the betterment of the game was on board with almost immediately, and this one, yeah, I'm out.
Yeah, like I said, this is my worry, is that all the rule changes have been so effective that if Rob Manfred's going passionately for an idea, and my hope is that he's kind of like feeling this out and that they're actually getting a read back from baseball fans who are unanimous saying, please do not do this. But the one difference is, too, is like, I know that the whole debate about the steroid era was that it screwed with all of Major League Baseball's records and that this is a sport where the records matter more than others. But to me, like, as I'm getting older, they do. Like, the other games have changed so drastically. Like, you have NBA teams that didn't have a three-point line, for God's sakes. And look how drastic. If you look at the NBA right now, the offensive ratings of teams has shifted so drastically that, like, the Golden State Warriors that we watched from a couple of years ago with Kevin Durant, where we were like, this is the best team of all time. They're like a middling team in offensive rating now in the modern day NBA. That's how quickly this thing moves. So when people try to do barometers of successes, like, it doesn't matter historically. To change 162 and to add some midseason tournament and change all of, like, think about how I loved watching the Cal Raleigh chase of being like, oh my God, he's going to hit 60 home runs as a catcher. This matters to me. And tinkering with the schedule, that's just, it's a little too far for me. I hope that he gets checked. But God, these guys are just insatiable for revenue. And if they feel like something's going to sell and that they can sell merchandise and that they can up ticket prices, I get nervous. I get real nervous. Anyway, I'm sorry about your Red Sox. I hope you don't sign Bo Bichette. I can't see him in the Red Sox uniform.
Like, we will.
He's got to go do the Roy Halladay thing in Philly. Hey, man, thanks for making time. I appreciate it.
It's good to see you. And
yeah,
if we do sign him, we'll take great care of him. But you should be rooting for him to not sign with the Yankees. That's what you should be rooting
I am rooting for him not to sign with the Yankees. That's obviously well, it's weird. I feel like Yankees and Dodgers both, as painful as it would be to see him over and over and over again, to go do the Kevin Durant move of join the team that beat you, it would weirdly leave a more sour taste in my mouth than if he did sign with the Yankees and they were the highest bidder.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but
he's not a Yankee.
I don't think so.
He's not a Yankee.
I don't think so either. I hope it's Phillies. Just go to the Phillies.
Yeah.
Jared Carrabis of Baseball is Dead in Section 10. Thanks, buddy. Talk to you soon.
JD, good to see you.
See you, pal. All right. Yeah. The reason I think that if you are a Blue Jays fan, you need to have this perspective within the division, which is, all right, you're spending this amount of money. And I would think there are a lot of people that are looking at it through the lens of, okay, but is it going to be sustainable? Are they going to continuously do this? And my real feeling is yes, that starting in, and they'd had iterations before that, but starting around the COVID stuff and the Hyun-Jin Ryu signing and then coming out of COVID with the George Springer signing and then Kevin Gossman, they were doing these things where they were giving guys money and they were real players in free agency. But it was always a question of, well, at some point they're probably going to let one of Vladdy or Bo go. And now that does appear to be the case, but they're not letting Bo Bichette walk simply because he's too expensive. They have spent money in other places. Like the payroll is extremely bloated to the point where, yeah, if they do sign Kyle Tucker, you're talking Dodgers money here. And now with the Red Sox and the state of that team, it's part of the reason why I think it's even more important for the Blue Jays to be pushing in and trying to get a guy like Kyle Tucker right now. Because I don't know how long that window is going to last. Maybe this is just who the Red Sox are now. But for whatever reason, since 2018, like they went the opposite direction with COVID. They decided that, as Carrabis put it, they're going to be a mid-market team in the way that they operate. So I think you just have to continuously take advantage of windows like that. The Yankees, I think, are always going to be the Yankees. But can you replace the Red Sox permanently, or at least for the foreseeable future, as the other team in the AL East, and maybe even closer to that team in the American League East? It is Leafs game day, which means you can score a Popeye's chicken sandwich for only $6 in classic or spicy. Make it your new game day tradition. Get your $6 sandwich at a Popeye's near you. Quick break and we'll hit what we missed. So just quickly before we hit what we missed, I wanted to wrap up just the Raptors thought. And I'm going to talk more about the Raptors tomorrow with Joe Cacciaro because there are nonstop reports emanating on them. The most recent one from Mark Stein about how, I'm paraphrasing here, but essentially there is a level of desperation emanating from the Raptors in terms of having to make a move. And you feel that, right? Like that's a real thing. This team has had a very nice step forward this season, but I talked about this at the outset of the year. And it was Michael Grange wrote a great article on it that this isn't a 2-3 year look at what the Raptors have with their main 5 players. It's going to be an expedited process where they either show an elevated ceiling, or if they look like a very good team but not a championship winning team, you're going to have to make some tough decisions. By all accounts, it doesn't seem like Emmanuel Quickley has much value around the league. And yeah, makes $32 million a season. And I don't know where you'd place him in the top point guards in the NBA, but I don't like if you start expanding that list to guys that actually handle the ball and are the primary. Like, I don't know how you feel about, like, Luka Doncic. Is he a point guard? But he is for the Lakers. But if you throw in guys like that, then he's pretty far down the list. And yet, none of the options are overly appealing to me, so they're in a bit of a tricky spot. But the one thing that you just have to laud them for is culturally, which did seem lost after the 2020 season. It just did. Like, they went into the one pandemic year down in Florida. It was a tank season. They got Scotty Barnes. There was the 2 timeline thing that ended up happening. They get into a playoff series with the Philadelphia 76ers. Barnes acquits himself well. The rest of the roster doesn't really. They go into the next season. They decide that they're not going to split up the core at that point. They're going to continuously run it back. They had already moved off of Norm Powell the year before, a guy that I think was very important to this team's culture and to their identity of, hey, we find guys later in the draft. We find guys that nobody else wanted. We cultivate a environment for them, an opportunity for them, and if they show out, we give them playing time. It started to trickle away. And then they lose Masai Ujiri, who I think exited while the team was not being viewed unanimously as in a great place. They're in a fine place because they have all their draft picks. There's no contract that they have on their salary sheet that is completely immovable. There's no sunk cost yet that looks devastating. Like, I'm not impressed with Quickley at his number. I think that was a bad negotiation. I also think the Pirtle negotiation was a tough one. But they're not in a horrible place. Like, they control their own future. They've got meaningful assets, all that stuff. It looks like Colin Murray-Boyles was a terrific pick. He was spectacular again. And now I love that he has this quote about how he lifts, that he was not, basically that he wasn't surprised by the physicality of the NBA because he lifts. He prepared himself properly. He is now the gym bro of the Toronto Raptors, and he was amazing. I cannot believe how quickly he is developed. Even the pass that he made, it's like, looked like he had a layup, but he is just, he's got a high IQ. I think that he knew the time on the clock. I think he knew he had time to make that play. I don't view that as a panic. I think that that's who he is give up a good shot to get a better shot, and that's what he did to close it. And his rebounding has been crucial for this team. His interior defense has been crucial to this team. It feels like he can guard a lot of different positions. I like his body language. I think he works his ass off. He feels like a Raptor in a good way, the way that the culture is supposed to be. And I think that they have taken a really meaningful step forward this year in terms of reestablishing themselves as a group that works very hard. And it's why when you see them bring in Elijah Martin, who is not supposed to be expected to do much of anything at all, play defense the way that he did last night and make a couple of big offensive plays that he made a couple last night. That feels like they're getting a little bit closer to the Raptors' identity, and Darko deserves a lot of credit for that. And yeah, it's sweet watching Nick Nurse lose. But probably the most important development for this team, more so than Brandon Ingram, who I think largely looks like Brandon Ingram when he's healthy, more so than Colin Murray-Boyles, is just how it feels watching Scotty Barnes right now. He's a terror. End of the game last night. Raptors get the final possession, and they give the ball to Barnes. They only have one foul to give, the Sixers. They have to take it with 6 seconds left. There's 6 seconds. They give it to Barnes. And I think it was Oubre who tried to pick him up defensively. They don't double immediately because Barnes is a great passer. I would have, because rather that than do what he did, which is just muscle his way to the basket. I think that's an N1. That it should have been an N1. I don't really know. Like he's gathering it, he's throwing it towards the basket. But it just, the feeling I had when they got him the ball was that he was going to be able to get to his spot and he was going to be able to get a good look. And it feels as though he has identified that as part of his game, which is he's not settling as much for the ugly one. That he's imposing his will physically, getting to his spot and forcing you to do what the Sixers did, which is take a bad foul. Because there's no other option to do. And he played a lot of minutes. I know that they have been a little cautious with them at times. I like, yes, he's playing a ton this year, but I just mean in terms of the way that they use him in the fourth quarters, at times they're taking him out for these little breathers in the middle of the fourth quarter, which, got to say, I'm not the biggest fan of when they happen a lot of the time. But either way, he has progressed to a point where the reason why I think that they are desperate in some way to augment the team or to make another deal is because he looks more like the guy than many people thought that he could be. He's always viewed as like a premier additive player, someone who's very good, thought he could make, a third team All-NBA or two throughout the course of his career. But that step to me is becoming more and more obvious and should be discussed by more and more people. Anyways, Brandon Brown is here, Buffalo Bills fan. Congrats on your win. You said you got more confident as the game went on before the show.
Yeah. No, I mean, we were talking with Armin as well.
The
And,
Bills.
I felt very, very nervous as the game was approaching kickoff. Just, you never know what's going to happen in these type of games. And we've talked all year about the inconsistencies of the Bills. But it felt like as the game went on, Bills had a bit of a lead, went into half looking good. And then, just like as the game script was continuing, I just felt like, okay, we're going to have a chance. It's close enough. You talked about it with Brady. You give it to Josh Allen, and he's probably the best at getting you what you need at the end of the game. So I was just really happy that they were able to play consistently enough. Defense looked okay. Obviously, they weren't challenged as much as we probably thought they would be by the Jags. But all in all, you just kind of take the win, and I think you move on. And I think I'll feel a lot better this week going into a game than I would have this past week.
I don't even really view the Bills positive as a big positive because we just knew this was who Josh Allen was. You and I talked about this a little bit before the show, but they flashed that stat of he's never had a game-winning drive in the playoffs.
Right.
I went, okay. He had the Chiefs game where Patrick Mahomes gets the ball and scores in 37 seconds?
It was like 13.
Was it less?
Yeah.
God, it's crazy that ended up happening.
Overtime. Yeah.
And then doesn't get the ball in overtime.
Yeah.
And you guys were a little bit crybabies and you changed the rules. But for the better of football, truly, because I do think that rule change was a good one. He also beat the Baltimore Ravens the year before where, technically Mark Andrews drops the football, but they didn't view it as he didn't have a game-winning drive. Anyway, it's a weird stat. I don't know how they're fully determining it given how much time needs to be left in the game or whatever. But I viewed that as a game-winning drive as well. Trevor Lawrence had a minute left. That said, they had that kicker. And I felt like, oh man, this is a real legacy spot for Trevor Lawrence. If they tie this game, what's going to happen in overtime? So I was a little bit more nervous for the Bills than I think you were. But in terms of the positive of Josh Allen's play, just think that this is who the guy is. And the idea that he was just going to somewhat fall apart or somehow fall apart in the playoffs just because it was the playoffs was kind of nonsensical to me. The only thing with the Bills that would have me a little concerned is I disagree with Brady full-heartedly. I cannot disagree more about Liam Cohen's game plan in that football game. Like Travis Etienne touching the ball 3 times as a rusher when he was gouging them on the outside made absolutely no sense to me. They had that one drive where they handed Tootin the ball. They're like, Tootin, what was it, 4 straight runs?
Yeah.
And he was just like, chunk. And every time they went to Trevor Lawrence, he didn't look very confident. He was throwing some bad balls. You guys do have a good pass defense. There's no doubt about that. It's been established throughout the course of this season. I think they did a really great job of pressuring Lawrence and also getting hands in his face, tipping a couple of those footballs at the line when he had receivers open downfield. But they made him uncomfortable. So I like that about you guys if you have a lead. My only fear is, what is it going to look like against the Broncos if Sean Payton decides we're going to run the ball like 30 times in this game, and Bo Nix is going to use his legs a ton in this game? That piece of it is, what do you look like if you're trailing and they can continuously run the football against your defense? Because I think if you're in a tight football game, your feeling is the right one, where if it's a one-score game, you're just looking at the clock saying, Josh Allen is only really going to need a minute and a half for us to get a field goal.
Yeah.
Our kicker, I trust him. He's old, but I trust him. Made some big kicks. And weirdly, so I'm sure you've seen, did you see the report on Gabe Davis's knee?
No, I haven't seen exactly
Yeah.
what the.
So apparently it's
update
so
is.
swollen that they cannot get a proper read on it, which means he's not playing this week.
No, can't imagine.
Josh Palmer's not coming back. Ty Johnson apparently is in a walking boot. And Shavers, who made a catch in that game, and who I don't know where Shavers came from. He just appeared one day. I was like, Shavers. He makes like 1 or 2 catches a game,
Yeah.
and they're always in big spots because the Bills, whenever they need it, it's always some random guy. So they're going to have Brandon Cooks and Khalil Shakir, the 2 tight ends, and beyond that, I don't know if Shavers doesn't play. Who's the next guy? Do you know?
Beyond that, not really. You're
Yeah,
talking
exactly.
practice squad, right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
some practice squad guy. And yet against the Denver Broncos, who employ the best cornerback in all of football and one of the better defenses and one of the more difficult environments to play in, despite those losses, and again, this is not them losing Diggs in his prime with them and losing Gabe Davis. It's not even losing Gabe Davis from in
Yeah,
his
a couple
prime
years
with them.
ago, yeah.
I just don't even. Maybe I'll feel differently when I'm watching the game if Allen can't come up with a play and Shakir can't get open and they decide Surtain's going to blanket him and force him to throw to the tight ends more. But it's weird to have a feeling about a quarterback. And maybe it's because he's proven it for so long now with no wide receivers and no weapons. But it's so strange to go look at them and say, I don't really care that they're down to practice squad receivers because the quarterback is so good. And that has to be an incredible feeling. The only thing that I would say counter to that is, if they do blow it against them, and it does turn out that you didn't have the weapons and you didn't have the receivers and you didn't have the rush defense, that's where you get even more pissed off at an organization for the roster construction around the guy. Because you say, we had the best quarterback in the NFL, and this is what you had around him. His margin for error was nothing. And I could feel that level of angst building up amongst your fan base. Like, you can't piss away years of Josh Allen when he's this.
No, you'll totally see that. I think that perspective, especially like you said, if they do lose, I think a lot of people will be looking at the roster construction more so than the individual players or the performances, especially from Josh, because everyone at this point I think knows kind of what you're getting, and it will be definitely a disappointment if it's a no name wide receiver who's dropping the ball in an important play in a fourth quarter coming up. So it'll definitely come down to the talent on both sides, and we'll just have to see what Allen can do with it.
Your offensive line deserves credit too.
Very good.
Yeah, very good in pass pro.
Yeah.
And next week too against the Broncos, James Cook will be more relevant, I think, than he was in that game.
You expect they're going to have to try to run the ball, especially on a Denver defense that's so stout kind of in every position. But I think the one saving grace with the Broncos compared to the Jags is that their offense has kind of been sputtering all year, and then
For sure.
they definitely don't feel like a unit that's going to go out and score a bunch of points.
No, they
So,
didn't have the same momentum that the Jags had. Honestly, like my true feeling, as what I said going into that game, I said it's Damashek, and he was like, "Oh, it's kind of the chalky feel," and I went, "It's just what." I thought that was the toughest matchup for the Bills, and that they got it right out of the gate. And I'm not saying that I think that it's a guarantee that they're going to the Super Bowl, or I feel like there's worlds apart because they do have those flaws. But I'm not as scared of the Broncos or the Patriots as I was a red-hot Jaguars team that looked dominant at times offensively, had all that momentum behind them. You know, they had Trevor Lawrence in the grills and him squatting girls at the bar, and just the way that they felt so balanced on offense, as fast as their defense played, as physical as their defense played. My only thing with Josh Allen is, how big of a beating did he take in that game? Because the one play at the line where he twisted his knee, although, God, he's just – I think I was watching – what was the horrific Tony Romo performance. Like,
yeah,
unbelievably bad Tony Romo performance. that sapped joy from that game. Like him comparing the Jaguars to the Panthers when the Jags opened or closed that game as favorites. Him just being confused throughout the entirety of the game. Him, ooh, Jim, Jim. But the one point that he did make that I liked was when Allen hit his hand off the helmet, that he was talking about the adrenaline that you can build off of through a football game.
Yeah.
And I'm curious. I would be curious to know what shape Josh Allen's body is in after some of those plays. And most concerningly, like the hand thing, whatever, I think he kind of moved past that and improved a lot in that game. But the knee, the way that he twisted that thing at the goal line, I went, God, that just can't possibly recover over the course of 3 days. And especially when you have to get on a plane and fly back somewhere. Anyway, anything else football that you want to do that I missed on?
No, I mean, I think, you didn't really get to touch on the Rams. I thought that I had the similar thought as you. It's just like the NFC, it's wide open, but almost in a different way. It's like there's the AFC, there's so many teams that feel like they can go out and win it and maybe take it. But in the NFC, I think we're kind of getting down to, who really do you expect? Like this Seahawks 49ers game for me.
Huge win
Might
for Seattle.
Might be the one that decides who's going to the Super Bowl for the NFC.
So the NFC West, the Rams, Seahawks, and Niners are 40-7 against everybody else this year.
Yeah.
It is a dominant division. That was the case last year with the NFC North, remember? It was, oh my God, the Vikings. Oh my God, the Lions. Oh my God, the Packers. These three teams, and then they all showed up to be frauds. And I don't feel that way with any of these three teams. The Niners are punching so high above their talent, and now losing Kittle and going to play in Seattle.
Yeah, against that defense.
Yeah, and listen, Eagles fans, to compare your defense to Seattle's defense this year, I think that we kind of proved unequivocally in that football game that we are not the same. Seattle's defense is much, much better. Seeing Brock Purdy play in those elements, I think, was very impressive. Kyle Shanahan is a very, very smart play caller, but I haven't looked at the lines. But my guess is that the Seahawks are going to be favored by like 5.5, 6.5 points against the Niners, just given all the injuries and the fact that they have the rest. I also haven't seen the schedule in terms of when they're going to play these games, because if they play on Saturday, that is a huge advantage for Seattle versus if they even get the extra day's rest. But the Rams, to me, I'd be nervous. I'd be nervous going to Chicago and playing in those elements and having Matt Stafford be outside and knowing that you could get into a shootout and that team could pass on you, and that Junior Lake guy didn't look very good. And I didn't feel as confident in the Rams on those fourth down plays when they had they were 0 for 3 on fourth downs. There's just a little something there. The only thing is that the Bears defense, I believe, is so putrid that if Jordan Love's throwing for 4 touchdown passes on you, I think the only script for the Bears is going to be if they score, 34 plus points to beat the Rams in this game, that it's going to be a shootout. But I just, elements, piece of it for Matthew Stafford. He looked a little old at times in that game. He hits his hand, and Greg Olsen nonstop is making excuses for him. My God, Greg Olsen, get over it. We get it. You love Matthew Stafford. You're desperate to be getting the approval of Matthew Stafford. But yeah, I thought that the Rams looked a little bit more human than I expected. And you want a team like that, if you're a Rams fan, to show up in the playoffs, flip a switch, and kick the ass of an opponent that had one of the second worst point differential in the entire NFC and nobody thought should be in the postseason. So a little shaky from them.
Yeah, quickly. I mean, the Niners Seahawks will be on Saturday.
Yeah.
Timing is to be decided, but so that means the Rams and Bears will be on Sunday.
Yeah.
And Seahawks right now they're favored by 6.5 points. So they're almost a touchdown. So
yeah,
I mean,
touchdown.
I think you're right. Like the Rams Bears almost feels like the game of like the two teams that have kind of survived this season, whereas the Niners and Seahawks, they're the two teams that have kind of gone out and like surpassed almost their expectations. So I'm excited to see both those games and what the NFC Conference Championship really looks like.
I'm such a huge Bears fan right now. Like, go Bears, go Bears, go Bears. Please let it be Bears, Seahawks in the NFC Championship game. Popeyes, it's Leafs game day. Score a Popeyes chicken sandwich for only $6 in classic or spicy. Make it your new game day tradition. Get your $6 chicken sandwich at a Popeyes near you. We are back tomorrow with James Myrtle and Joe Kashar. We'll see you then.